So today, the focus of the session is going to be around helping organisations to make the switch to electric vehicles and really zeroing in on the commute specifically, which is a really important way to think about how we reduce our Scope 3 emissions. During the course of today, we're going to hear from a couple of different people and some really exciting speakers who we'll introduce shortly. It's going to be a really exciting opportunity to find out more and hopefully get some really useful insights for you to take away to your businesses. A bit of housekeeping. So we're going to be using the Q&A function for questions. I'll be monitoring these and we will have time at the end to do these. We're recording the session, so don't worry if you have to shoot off early or you weren't able to attend today or you have colleagues that want to get the content, because we'll send a copy of the recording out to everybody. So you're still going to be accessing the content, but hopefully we'll have as many of you live throughout the session as possible, because it's always a bit better, isn't it, to be getting it in real time. So first and foremost, I want to introduce Charlotte. So Charlotte is the Senior Partnerships and Account Manager with the LiftShare Group, who lead on mobility partnerships and supporting key organisations with zero carbon commuting and lift sharing, which is a really exciting concept that I personally really love. She's been with the group for over 2 years and loves collaborating with clients and partners to create and achieve sustainable commuting goals. And I think you're going to get that vibe from her when she joins. She's a super friendly and really engaging presenter. So that's all from me for now, but over to Charlotte and enjoy the rest of the session.
Good morning, everyone. And yeah, thank you for being with us today. Loads of you who've joined, so no pressure, and also that I'm an exciting, engaging presenter. But what I'm going to basically take you through is, you'll have seen in the webinar title, Zero Carbon Commuting. Some of you may be existing LiftShare Group and Mobilityways clients, so you'll know all about this. But yeah, I'm going to take you through what is zero carbon commuting, why it's important, and why it's important for your organisation, and then what we're doing at Mobilityways to address this, and then obviously how EVs fit into this picture. So next slide, please, Jackson. So what is zero carbon commuting and why is it important? So kind of to put this into context, at LiftShare Group, we've been working with organisations on sustainable commuting behaviour change for about 25 years. One of the main benefits of lift sharing, and I'll touch on lift sharing in a minute and why organisations want to do it, is obviously, if you're getting more than one person in a car, reducing in single occupancy vehicles, you're saving a lot of carbon, improving air quality, etc. So when the pandemic hit, we had a little bit of time on our hands. We were looking at we're talking to organisations about climate change, sustainability anyway. As experts in the commute, we looked at the commute and we thought, okay, we know that there's it's a big driver to climate change, but what does the commute contribute to these sort of net zero conversations? And in our research, we found that the commute contributes 5% of all carbon emissions in the UK annually. That's 18 billion kilograms of CO2. That's not 5% of transport emissions, that's 5% of all emissions. So, it's not small fry. However, when we spoke to organisations about what they were doing about, we're talking about lift sharing, doing lots of other things, but, what are you doing around commuting emissions? There wasn't really, it seemed like a little bit of a gap. And obviously, when looking at net zero, with 5% of all emissions coming from commuting alone, if we're not looking at commuting, we're going to fail in our net zero goals, and that's not something that we want to do. And I know there'll be lots of you on the call today who are, your key role is looking at environmental strategy. So next slide, please, Jackson. So yeah, when we talk to organisations around commuting, the key challenges that we heard around sort of commuting emissions were there's no sort of easy way to measure our team's commuter emissions. In terms of actually, reducing commuter emissions, obviously you need people to change their behaviour, to car share, to active travel more, walk and cycle, to shift to EVs. But it's really difficult to affect behaviour change across all sizes of workforce, particularly large and diverse workforces. And then, I know a lot of you today will be looking at, lift share schemes, EV salary sacrifice schemes, hopefully more so after today, active travel, particularly if you work for a local authority, there's been a lot of funding around that. But what is the net impact of all of these initiatives, all of this investment we're making? Where do we want to get to? and there was no kind of real reporting framework to be able to measure all of that. So as Mobilityways, we've sort of come together to try to support that challenge, which we're now doing, and which is fantastic. Next slide, please, Jackson. And just to kind of put that into context in terms of the opportunity. So we ran a national commuter travel survey this year with 11,000 responses. It's kind of one of the largest sort of national travel surveys that have been done outside of sort of the census reports the government does. The last one's not come out yet. But what it showed was really, really interesting in terms of you know, what commuters are thinking and feeling and what they could be persuaded to do. So, you know, just one stat, I think it's over 89% of, you know, those that responded said they could be encouraged to car share. And you can see lots of, you know, data there on the bottom around, you know, what people would consider. So, you know, a lot of people would consider car share, cycling. Yet, you know, baseline data shows us that, you know, there's still really high numbers of people driving alone. Bus usage is massively down, you know, shared mobility is massively down on pre-pandemic. So, you know, we've got this massive challenge around commuting emissions. People are, you know, from the looks of it, want to change and are willing to change, yet we've still got this challenge. So this is really an opportunity for us to be working together to, you know, get people doing more environmentally friendly ways of getting to work. And we really know that it's by working with organisations, with large employers, to, you know, that we're gonna get this. Commuting is a very specific set of behaviours that are, you know, intricately linked with the workplace, with parking. So this is really why we work with employers to look at this and why Mobilityways exists. So next slide, please, Jackson. So in terms of who we are, really, if you don't know, so yeah, we're going on, I think, 24 years now. We work with around 700 organisations here in the UK. Just before 2020, we'd taken 1 billion miles off the UK's commuting miles off the UK's roads as a, you know, collaboration of our efforts across the group. And we work with all types of organisations that you can see there. So from airports to local authorities to, you know, corporates. If you have staff that are commuting, we can help you. Next slide, please, Jackson. So just to take you through really high level, sort of the Mobilityways platform and sort of what we're doing and how we're helping. I'm not going to go massively into detail on the product because if you're, you know, if you don't work with us already, you know, obviously we'd love you to book in a demo with on the team. But this is just to give you a flavour of the kinds of really cool things we do. So in answer to some of the challenges that we just outlined, we've built the Mobilityways platform. Now, lots of things in here we've been doing for years, but I'll take you through high level each one of the modules. But essentially, we're looking to measure, reduce, and report. And we do it all, you know, it's all in a dashboard in one place for you. Next slide, please, Jackson. So the first thing I'm going to really quickly take you through, which is super relevant actually to the EV conversation, is the ASIL rating. Now, ASIL stands for your average commuter emissions level. And this is really kind of the, you know, the crux of Mobilityways. So this is kind of what we developed in answer to organisations saying, you know, there's no one way to measure commuter emissions. You know, if you don't know where you are, how can you create targets to where you want to get to? Yeah, so what you can basically see here is this organisation has an ASIL score of 507, which means the average commuter at this organisation produces 507 kilos of carbon a year. Then what we obviously look to do is create targets to bring that down in line with your own net zero, scope 3 net zero goals. And the idea is if we're tracking it, we're benchmarking it, we can, you know, effectively make plans to reduce it. Obviously, that number is made up of, you know, people walking and cycling, but also people driving alone, taxis, everything. And I'll show you an example with EVs later. But that's basically ASIL for you. Next slide, please, Jackson. We get to that by delivering a travel survey for you. So this is been modularized in the dashboard. But yeah, obviously travel surveys are a great way to understand travel behavior. Where are staff now? what are their thoughts, feelings, barriers to change, and this is where we get your key data for the ASOL as well. It's all in the dashboard. We support you with an annual sort of report where we give you lots of insights on what people are doing, and obviously, you know, there'll be information there on you know, who's interested in EV, who's considering it, and when. All of that kind of stuff. We'll talk about everything, and sometimes because we've got lift share in the group, people think we're just looking at lift share. We're not at all. We're obviously looking at everything because it is about the whole commuting picture. So yeah, that's travel surveys. That's something that we'd look to do annually, and we've got some really cool features in there. So it's customizable, and yeah, we've got the team, the professional services team, who are really great at giving some insights for you. Next slide, please, Jackson. The next piece on the sort of measure is something that we call scoping smart mobility. Now, scoping is where we take anonymized postcode data, we put it through our system, and we show you basically all the opportunities for sustainable commuting and where the gaps in provision are. And I know Jane from London City Airport, who's going to be talking at the end, is going to share some insights that the airport got from scoping. But what you can basically see here is the dots represent employees. This is looking at active travel. So everyone within kind of the middle area there could feasibly walk based on average, you know, walking distances. Everyone within the orange can cycle, all based on feasibility. Now, we also show who could lift share, who could take public transport, you know, across all the public transport modes. But what it ultimately shows is not only who could do things, but where the gaps in provision are. So what this is really useful for when we're kind of looking at that overall zero carbon commuting picture is, you know, when we're trying to build out infrastructure, you know, who would we want to target with active travel? Who is just outside of this kind of feasibility line for cycling? Does that facilitate a conversation with the local authority to see, you know, do we need to put better cycle paths here? Where there are massive deltas in public transport provision, can we talk to our local transport operator to prove commercial viability for a new service, etc., etc.? There's a lot we can do with it with lift share as well, but it's basically getting the real world view of what employees are doing now. Now, when we talk to a lot of organisations, they do, you know, surveys quite regularly. That's showing you what people are doing. Where the gap often is understanding what people could be doing. And between those two sets of data that we look at in the measure part, you know, we can really start to drill down and make some very clever and interesting plans that otherwise without this data you wouldn't be able to do. So that's scoping. We do this, you know, per site, per year, and we've had some really, you know, usually there's some sort of sounds of amazement when we do this, because organisations discover things that they just didn't know before, and they've got some really great data to you know, push on with schemes and get some business cases for things. So that's scoping. Next slide, please, Jackson. And obviously, when we're going into the reduce part, we don't want to forget about lift share. So lift share is kind of, you know, it's where the group has come from, and it's, you know, a big string to our bow. So lift share, we're sort of, you know, under the group, we're the UK's #1 car sharing platform. And yeah, lift sharing is just one of the many ways that you can easily reduce your commuter emissions, helping staff saving money as well. We all know kind of the fuel and sort of cost of living crisis at the moment. Simply being able to share your lift, even if you're only going to work a few times a week. You know, I think the average now is if you're going to work 3 times a week, you can still, and you share your lift, you can save £1,000 a year. But yeah, it's a way to proactively reduce your commuter emissions in the long term. And for a lot of organisations that are on today, that are working with us, we know we've been sort of key partners with lift share to, you know, support with commuter emissions reduction, and obviously, you know, parking problems as well. Simple, if you're getting, you know, reducing people driving on their own, getting more bums on seats, you're going to be supporting your car parking issues as well. So that's lift share, and again, if that's something specifically you'd like to talk to us about, we'll put details on after to get in touch. Next slide, please, Jackson. And then on the reduction piece, and kind of as part of a full programme, and we'd look at personal travel plans. So this is basically delivering a travel plan to an individual, which is showing them, showing your employee their sustainable commuting and what options that they have, including lift share. You can put details of your EV salary sacrifice scheme on there, your charging facilities, bike lockers, showers, all that kind of thing. But yeah, they're showing their options in order of sustainability. They'll be shown the money they would save, the calories they'll burn. But yeah, it's basically, if you're an organisation that wants to, or a local authority that wants to communicate, your lift share scheme, your cycling scheme, you might have just put on some new bus routes or a shuttle bus. This is a way to let people know that it's an option for them, as opposed to just kind of going carte blanche and communicating things. This is making it personal to individuals. And there's lots of data in the dashboard as well that shows you, how many plans are being delivered, sent, etc., and what that sort of behaviour change is looking like. So yeah, that's a very high level sort of potted piece around what we do. There is obviously a lot more information on it, so if you are interested in learning a little bit more, that's that. But before I pass over to Natalia, I just wanted to kind of circle back to EVs and what we do, and I guess why we have a partnership and why we've got this why Mobilityways and Octopus electric vehicles work well together. So in the Mobilityways platform, in the ASOL tool, we have an ASOL simulator. So we can take a mix of your data to or whatever that your targets might be, and we create, well, what would our commuter emissions look like if we got 10% of people lift sharing, if we managed to get the 80% of people who could walk and cycle, if we got half of those to actually walk and cycle, what would that look like? What can we put in our target reporting? So I actually use this feature to do a simulator for what would happen if your organization only did an Octopus electric vehicle scheme, or an EV salary sacrifice scheme. We wouldn't recommend you do that. EVs aren't the silver bullet. It's all about looking at active travel and everything in between. But looking at an average organisation that has the average ASOL for the country, which is 600, that has 3,000 employees, Octopus electric vehicles, and I'm sure Natalia will tell you more, in their first year see an average of 10% of staff signing up. So say even just 5% of your staff switched from an internal combustion engine vehicle to an EV, just 5% of this average employers with an average ASOL moved over to EV, you would be reducing your ASOL by about 9%. So that's 600 kilograms of carbon per person on average to 549 per person on average. So when you extrapolate that out to your total sort of scope 3 commuter emissions, that's really powerful. And obviously you won't just be looking at EV, you'll be looking at other things. But I just wanted to kind of demonstrate, why EVs are important. And next slide, please, Jackson, just finally. And this is just showing you the data in the dashboard, and you can just see that 5%, everything else staying the same, but that 5%, and obviously we would look at all other modes, but just EV. So anyway, lots I could keep talking about. I'm obviously this is a very interesting subject. Lots of questions I can see, which is fantastic, but I will pass over back to Natalie and Natalia. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. Really interesting to see that whole journey of making real sustainable commitments and change. And hopefully you can see how something like Mobilityways or Lift Share can help you make really informed decisions around your own kind of carbon as a business. And this is probably where something like a scheme like Octopus electric vehicles comes in. What I'll say first is, if you've got any questions that are really specific to your own scheme, so maybe you're a live partner of ours already, please do get in touch with your account manager or email hello@octopusev.com. But if you are interested in, asking more general questions, of course, keep putting them in the Q&A function. We're now going to hear from Natalia. So she is head of propositions at Octopus Electric Vehicles and also my boss. Her focus is very much directed at future planning and future proofing the business. So she has led on the development of the salary sacrifice product kind of from its infancy for us, and is currently exploring some really exciting developments in the kind of consumer and personal hire space, which is a really exciting kind of direction of travel for us, pardon the pun. She has been part of the Octopus family since our journey began, and is also incredibly experienced in the world of charging solutions and things. So if there are a couple of questions we might be able to get through for her on that in the Q&A. So delighted to welcome Natalia to the call, and I'll carry on monitoring the chat and the Q&A. So please do keep putting them in there. Really enjoying your thoughts so far. Thanks then.
Thanks for the intro, Natalie. I have to say, I'm amazed at the amount of people that are engaging in this conversation. I absolutely love it. 218 people have joined the webinar. Charlotte, it's amazing to see everything you guys are doing over at Mobilityways and LiftShare. You're right, EVs aren't the silver bullet. They are part of the solution, and you guys are helping organizations to figure out the whole picture, which I love, which is why we are partners. I have noticed, I've been reading the Q&A panel, and I can see there are lots of very specific questions on salary sacrifice, including the Octopus EV scheme. We might get to some of those questions today. We probably won't get to all of them, so please reach out to us after this, and we can go into like the actual very detailed scheme specifics to address all of those. I guess a quick intro on Octopus Electric Vehicles. Ultimately, we're here to help individuals and businesses to go zero emission. We're an EV leasing business that is born out of the Octopus Energy Group. You might be familiar with our pink octopus. We're everywhere nowadays. We were born out of the energy retailer, Octopus Energy, and everything we do really is to kind of decarbonize our economy and to accelerate the transition to net zero. And we're doing that across energy, including generation and supply. We're doing that across heat, but we're also doing that across transport. And that's where Octopus EV comes in. Let's start with the why, and then I'll tell you a bit more about our business and the scheme and what we're doing. Next slide, please, Jackson. So ultimately, we are in the midst of a climate crisis. This is kind of irrefutable now. We are warming up our planet. Emissions are not a threat to just us, but also our future generations. And ultimately, it's up to all of us as individuals, as businesses, public and private sector, to stop that, right, and to kind of make the change. Specifically in the area of transport, we're talking that, about 30% of the UK's carbon emissions come from transport. That's crazy. And yes, that's all transport. That's not just passenger cars, but we are talking about 30 million cars on the road that either need to be taken off the road or need to switch to zero emission. And in reality, the solution for that part of the market, for that part of transport, are battery electric vehicles. Cars will be going electric. That technology has already won. And the question is, how do we make this happen faster? There are a huge amount of benefits of doing this, including much better air quality. You all might have noticed during COVID, if you lived in towns or cities, that the air felt cleaner. And one of the main reasons was that we had a lot less cars on the road. So I guess that's where we come at it from. Yes, we're an EV leasing business, and yes, we offer an amazing salary sacrifice scheme, but this is the reason why we're doing it. Next reason, please. Next slide, please, Jackson. What's in it for our employers? I mean, this stat is crazy, right? A third of UK workers are considering a career change in 2022. Ultimately, it is harder to recruit and it is harder to retain employees nowadays. And salary sacrifice, high value salary sacrifice products can be a really great way of attracting, but also retaining your employees, which is, I guess, what we're here to do. We're here to help you on your sustainability journey, but we're also here to offer your employees a great benefit. Next slide, please. Guys, these are some of the key pillars, right, that describe salary sacrifice. Like, ultimately, in very simple terms, most people are familiar with a cycle to work scheme. You get your bike, you pay for it out of your gross salary, you make savings through your income tax and national insurance, and therefore what you pay in your net has attributed those savings, right? The alternative would be that you just get your net salary that you've already paid your income tax and national insurance on, you use that net pay and you go and buy a bike separately, but there you don't get those savings, right? You can do the exact same thing with a car. So picture a £400 lease that comes out of your £2,500 salary. So you are now only paying tax, so income tax and national insurance on that 2,100 portion, and therefore you're saving on that £400. And actually, with a number that big, you're talking £400, it could be a high amount. If you're looking at the higher value EVs, that's a huge amount of money you can save by getting an electric car through salary sacrifice. So ultimately, the most affordable way to get an EV today is facilitated through salary sacrifice. It's therefore facilitated through your employer. That's an amazing benefit you can get. And you would normally take that car out on a 2, 3 or 4 year lease. The average amount someone takes a car from us for is 40 months. So that's an equal split really between 3 and 4 year leases. So you can imagine the commitment an employee is making to you as a business. On the flip side, you pay next to no tax for that benefit. So benefit in kind, which is the tax that you would normally pay to receive a benefit in your salary through salary sacrifice, is only at 2% for pure battery electric vehicles. So from that perspective, it kind of seems like a no-brainer, right? You want to offer employees a great benefit. You want to help them make that switch to electric, and this is a great way of doing it. Ultimately, businesses work with us because we really do put sustainability at the heart of what we do. There is a bigger reason as to why you're doing this, and the entire Octopus Energy Group can help your organization to decarbonize. You know, we're talking from supplying your offices with green energy, to installing charging points at your offices or your employees' homes, to helping your fleets to transition to electric, to helping your employees go green through salary sacrifice. There's been quite a few questions about scheme administration and setup and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go into it a bit more than I had planned to. Ultimately, you as a business sign up to a scheme with us. So you're actually signing a contract with Octopus EV and you're taking out leases on behalf of your employees. Your employee then signs a contract, an agreement that we facilitate on your behalf that ties them into that salary sacrifice with you. So you lease cars from us and then you allow your employees to lease those cars and pay for those cars through their gross salary. We make this as easy as possible for you as the employer. We will set up all the documentation. We will handle the entire employee journey. We will issue you with payroll deduction reports, so you know exactly how much you need to deduct from employee salaries every month. And we'll supply you with a dashboard that makes it really simple for you to track everything. So you don't have to talk to your account manager every day. You can look at your dashboard, but if you've got more specific questions, we'll help you on a one-to-one basis too. We also help mitigate some of the risks for you. I've seen that a few questions have cropped up. What happens if an employee leaves? What happens if they go on parental leave and can no longer afford the car? Our scheme includes protections for those kind of circumstances because we completely get it. Circumstances change. You need to be able to mitigate that risk internally. We also don't want to penalize your employees unnecessarily. So within our scheme, we allow for a certain number of terminations every year under a certain set of circumstances. So we make this as easy as possible for you to implement and manage. And ultimately, what is different about us, right? I've already told you our sustainability story. But we also hold customers at the heart of what we do. So we are the only 5-star Trustpilot salary sacrifice scheme provider. Everything Octopus companies do are about supporting that transition to net zero, but also looking after customers and offering them a great service. So we're super proud of that. And if you go and have a look at our Trustpilot reviews, you'll see what our customers think of us too. Next slide, please, Jackson. How do we do this, right? From an employee, what are they actually getting? It's really simple. We essentially bring the electrification package together for your staff. We can also support you as a business with things like charging, like I've mentioned already, but ultimately what we're trying to do is build that electrification package that gives your employees the confidence to switch to electric. So that's the car, but it's also everything they need around the car and their servicing. So servicing, maintenance, roadside assistance, tire changes, motor insurance, everything to make it super simple to get that car on the road. And not only that, make it super simple for the organization to not have to think about these things. We then package the right charging and energy solution for them. How do I charge my car? Where do I charge it? If you can charge at home, we'll install a home charger at your house. If you can't charge at home, we'll enable you with 5,000 miles of credit on the electric use network, which is a £600 contribution to that customer to get them on the road, charging out about in the public domain. And if you can switch your energy at home to our green energy tariffs and you switch to our EV tariff, we'll also give you 5,000 miles on that tariff. And not only that, we encourage you to share your car. Lift Share for Work is a great way to not only get people into EVs, but actually get multiple people into EVs and reduce that carbon footprint around your commute. I realize that I've gone through this all at high level quite quickly, but hopefully you can see that from a benefit perspective, it makes a huge difference to employees. It's a benefit that they really highly value. It's something that you can launch and implement relatively easily and seamlessly into your business. And we've pulled everything together that so your employees don't have to worry about making that switch to electric. We empower them to do so. Next slide, please, Jackson. We've had over 1,500 companies join us so far. We work with SMEs right down from companies of 25 employees through to organizations of tens of thousands of employees. So this really is for everyone. We will support you no matter the size of your business. For every car that, for every ICE car, so internal combustion engine car that we get off the road, we are happy. So if you take 2 cars on your scheme, or if you take 200 cars on your scheme, we'll be happy. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, from this perspective, we are keen for everyone to join the EV revolution. We do salary sacrifice today. We will soon be launching a personal lease product for individuals to also go electric. And yeah, I'm looking forward to answering any questions you might have. Back to you, Natalie.
Thank you so much. I'm so impressed at how many questions there are. I'm frantically trying to answer some of them. So do bear with me if there are any typos or it looks a bit blunt. I'm just conscious that I'm trying to get through to everybody. So who we're going to hear from now? So we're going to hear from Jane. Jane has over 25 years experience in planning with a particular focus on waste and the environment. And most recently has been working for London City Airport. So really exciting local one for me. She's been instrumental in working on key transport and commute projects that are feeding into the airport's ambitious net zero strategy, one of which is Mobilityways. So really excited to hear from Jane and I will hand over to you, Jane, now.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I too am very impressed of the number of people who are taking part today. This is my first webinar. Hope I do it justice and give you a good insight into Mobilityways. So Mobilityways, why sign up? Well, simply put, we signed up as a business because we want to become net zero. We have travel plan commitments, but also a sustainability agenda to achieve net zero by 2030. Transport by staff forms part of this picture. And as an airport, we are a large employer and we want to understand what options are available for our employees and those of our airlines and concessions. With over 1,650 people employed at the airport, even more before the pandemic, we would not be able to do that ourselves. And the airport, we are already using Lift Share, and Mobilityways was a natural fit, being the sister company. And they share the same staff, so I liaise with Charlotte on both Lift Share and Mobilityways. So we already have a good sustainable access to the airport, in particular the DLR. With the help of Mobilityways, we've just undertaken a travel survey, which Charlotte mentioned earlier, to find out how people travel to work. The results are it's hot off the press, so the results are being analysed, but Mobilityways facilitated the survey and made everything seamless. They put the survey together, they helped with the questions, the branding, and they gave lots of general advice, and were always available to help us out. The survey was completed using their bespoke app, which people found quick and easy to use and access. Particularly helpful was the QR code that they could just scan and then it downloaded the survey. And that was particularly helpful because I could go around with a sheet of paper, not lots of paper and producing more waste, and they could just scan it with their phone and do it there and then. In January, we provided Mobilityways with the postcode of all our employees. Within a matter of weeks, they produced a detailed scoping report which mapped out what the sustainable transport opportunities were for each person. So that's an enormous task if you were trying to do it without Mobilityways. And they provided us with the carbon saving opportunities per employee. As Charlotte said, we were all amazed and we gasped at those results. They're currently comparing that baseline data, well, that opportunity data, to our actual survey. And I have to say that we're very interested to see the results, and we will be getting those in a couple of weeks. So all the work that they do, you don't have to wait months for it. It is really a matter of weeks to do the report. And I have to say as well that they're very professional, very easy to understand. But interestingly, I've had a sneak peek at the survey. It asks a lot of questions, not just on how people travel to work, but what is stopping them from being more sustainable? What would they like to change? And that's very important to understand, as Charlotte said, because it will enable us to target specifically to what people want rather than what we perceive people would want to achieve. And about 50% of the respondents said that they would car share if they knew somebody who lived near them. Well, interestingly, the Mobilityways scoping has already confirmed that 79% of staff who currently work at the airport live within walking distance of someone else who works at the airport. And that is, to me, a great insight, and demonstrates the way that the scoping can really facilitate your travel plans and targets and measures putting in place. The lift share scheme itself was paused during the pandemic. We did do a mini relaunch last year, but with the variants we had to stop, we stopped that. So with Charlotte, we're going to relaunch our lift share next month. And they provide all the comms and support necessary for that. And I think that given the scoping exercise, then it's something that we want to push and monitor uptake. Of course, there will be different shift patterns. The airport's open long hours and other things to consider. But if it makes someone think about the possibilities available to them that they didn't know there was those possibilities before, it's a stepping stone and hopefully a start of a journey to behaviour changes. And this is where the next stage will be to promote the personal travel plans that Charlotte mentioned. They will hopefully come into their own, and they offer a bespoke service to each individual. So Mobilityways, as I said, always on hand to advise and support, and we look forward to seeing what their recommendations are going to be. And it really is a seamless process. They make it look so easy, but I know they're working hard behind the scenes, but they make it easy for us as an airport, and we think it's an invaluable service to help us on the path to net zero. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Really interesting to hear about one of these things in practice, isn't it? So thank you for that. We're going to open up a Q&A now. As I say, we've been trying to cover some of them throughout the session. So hopefully now we'll have all of our panelists' lovely faces, and we can go through a few of these now. So I'm going to try and filter some of these down. I can see that Charlotte has actually already earmarked a few to answer live. So what I might do is cover some of these quickly first. So Charlotte, does the 18 billion kilograms include all commuting emissions, buses and trains, etc.? What do you think?
Yes, it does. I meant to, I think, click type. I wanted to type an answer, but I didn't want to speak over someone else. So yes, it includes all modes of transport that are within census. So everything from walking, cycling, working from home, bus, tram, train, tube, everything is in there. If you want a full breakdown to look at the we've done national averages as well. If you go to mobilityways.com, we have a map and we've done an ASIL for each region in the UK, and you'll be able to see the modal breakdown there.
Would that be a good place for Mark to have a look at how much is attributed to cars and vans as well?
Yeah.
Great. Well, hopefully, Mark, that's helpful, and you can have a little look on the website there. A point here from John, we'll stick with the Mobilityways lift share theme. So how do we make it that I'm comfortable with my safety in the hands of a driver I don't necessarily know when lift sharing?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Natalie?
Yeah, that's fine. How do I make sure I'm comfortable with my safety in the hands of a driver I might not know when I'm lift sharing?
Of course. Okay. So yeah, this is something that we get asked sometimes by organisations. So I mean, I guess for the purpose of today, we're talking about lift share for work, which is, you know, obviously a bespoke lift share platform designed for your employees. You can have it, you know, we have about a 50-50 split. Some organisations choose to just have their employees, you know, you don't want to share with other businesses. Some organisations say, do you know what, we want to get matches up so they can share with the public network as well, or local businesses. I guess the point is it's a community platform. You're not obligated to share with someone that you don't feel comfortable with. We have a secure messaging app within the platform, sort of, you know, make sure okay. And we do advise that you kind of, you know, you meet in a public place to make sure that you're comfortable. We've also got kind of lots of safety guidelines on there, but I would say in the sort of 24 years we've been running, we've not had an incident escalated to the police. So it very is much a community-based platform, but, you know, you can learn as much or as little as you want to know about someone that you'd be car sharing with. So it's really in your hands. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Charlotte. And I'm going to open this one up to the panel a bit more widely because we've got probably of interest to a couple of people on this call. So is one of the barriers to people making the change towards electrification and other kind of modes of sustainable transport the cost, or do you think it's something more around behavioural change? Would anyone like to go first commenting on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it.
Thanks.
Well, so if we're looking at the switch to EV, yeah, cost does impact that. I'm not going to lie. These cars are a bit more expensive than their petrol and diesel counterparts today, and there isn't as much choice. We are offering more than 65 models today, which is amazing because 5 years ago there was about 5, but they are a bit more expensive, which is why things like salary sacrifice make it much more affordable to make that switch. This is also a new car market, really, when it comes to EV, right? So that kind of second-hand car market is only now starting to build, which will make it more accessible to more people. It's why we also back leasing. We want cars at the end of their 2, 3, 4 years to end up in the second-hand market and be more affordable. But yeah, cost is a barrier. The other one is a bit of mind shift, right? Like we deal a lot with educational challenges. How do I charge it? Where do I charge it? Is it really green? Lots and lots of questions about making that switch away from petrol and diesel, which once you kind of get people comfortable with, they're like, oh yeah, I'm less concerned about that. Oh yeah, I don't actually need 500 miles of range or autonomy on my car. Like I rarely go more than 25 miles a day, and 200 miles is more than enough. You kind of just have to educate a bit to make that switch to EV. But yeah, cost is a perceived barrier.
Charlotte, any comments around that maybe in your space?
Switch to EVs. I mean, yeah, I'd echo what Natalia said. I think there's kind of, yeah, there's lots of different elements. Cost is obviously one, and it's just like general, I think, lack of education. So I guess where we would come in is, yeah, looking at the data around what specifically are the barriers that your employees have or that they foresee that they have, and then, you know, work from there. But yeah, it's across charging, cost, range anxiety, things like that. But that's something, you know, that we would probably, again, I was just trying to have a peek at the London City Airport survey that we've just done, but I have lots of passwords to get in, so I couldn't. But yeah, it's that's why we kind of look at the data, and you know, we then work on the personalised travel plans and things, and with you guys to make sure that we're tailoring what the comms are going to be to address those challenges.
Thank you. I'm just having a quick scroll through to see, yeah, we've had over 70 questions today, which is fantastic. And I'm just so there's a couple in there that I'm going to pass over to the panelists if they can to maybe comment on, so things around cost and logistics. But one thing I'm going to quickly catch all, because it's come up a couple of times on here now, are 2 points. One is around lead times and one is around kind of plug-in hybrids. So I'll answer the second one first, kind of counterintuitive there. So Octopus electric vehicles, we decided to be really brave and say we're not going to offer any plug-in hybrids. Lots of reasons behind that, mainly because people don't tend to drive them properly. And I'm sure there will be some people on the call who do drive them very sensibly, but we were hearing horror stories of people returning their, you know, plug-in hybrid and the charger had never even come out the box, which is obviously a hugely inefficient way to be driving a vehicle like that if you're hoping to use it for, you know, greening up your commute or your travel options more generally. The direction of travel is 100% electric vehicles, right? So we were happy to kind of say, we're going to hang our hat on a pure electric scheme. So for those of you who are looking, we would happily talk to you. And a big part of what we do is educating the wider business around why electric vehicles are not necessarily as scary to get your head around. So that's point one. Second one's around lead times. Obviously, it's a big issue in the sector. We've done lots to do things like around securing supply, you know, preemptively buying up build slots. We have a really fabulous kind of data insights team who really drill down into the data and say, you know, we think that the most popular vehicles of 2022 are going to be X. So then we'll try and do all we can to source them. You know, we've got lots of vehicles ready to go, and you can filter on the quote tool and things around availability, and our EV sellers will always make sure that they're being really transparent about that availability. Obviously, if you want to spec up something super sexy, it might take a bit longer, so just be mindful of that, but something we'll cover with everybody. Let's have a look. A couple more questions on here. So I can see that there's a oh, this is an interesting one. Does lift share work across multiple employers? So could you be doing lots of shares from different companies? A quick one.
So yes, we can. It really, I think this kind of actually links to the last question around safety. We do work with a lot of business parks across the UK. We work regionally. Again, we've got organisations who, you know, are close by to other organisations, so it absolutely makes sense to work together. But it obviously depends on the need, the want, what the requirements are. But basically, yes, we can.
Fantastic. We've got a time for a few more questions. Okay. Oh, some nice insights in the chat as well. I think I'm trying to read about 15 different things, so I'm sorry if I've missed anything from anybody. So this is an interesting one. Is there a comparison drawn between the 89% who would consider car sharing and the distance from the workplace? For example, how many of these 89% could consider active travel but don't? And the reason Tom's asked this is because in order for workplaces to identify those who would benefit from owning an EV and car sharing and things, it's kind of thinking a bit more around those lines. Does that make sense?
I think it does. So basically breaking down the opportunity of, you know, so yeah, absolutely. So that's what we look to do with sort of the scoping and the travel survey, and like sort of what Jane alluded to that we're doing with them. So it's kind of matching up the potential, you know, what people could do, what people say they're willing to do. I mean, obviously what people say they're willing to do and what they actually will do, the thing between is what infrastructure you put in place, what incentives are in place, and how you're communicating it. So that's kind of the bits in the middle. And that's why we have partnerships like this, and why we exist. So yes, absolutely.
Fab. Something that's coming up as a lot in theme in the chat was around liability. This is a larger issue that we probably have time for today, but Natalia, would you be happy just to make a brief comment kind of on how we stand in terms of, it's mainly around the logistics, I think, of explaining around, so we take out the leases with the business, and then the kind of the driver is obviously then working with their employer to lease the vehicle off of them. I think I've just confused myself. But anyway, there's a couple of questions like this, for example. So with the salary sacrifice system, does the employer retain the cost liability of the car if the employee leaves the business? I think we've kind of touched upon that, but there was a general point around liability if people are leaving that is still coming through. So I wasn't sure if you were able just to really quickly recap that really specifically in our kind of termination protection.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, our standard scheme for all employers will allow you to terminate 10 cars a year or 10% of your total fleet a year under a certain number of conditions. So that's things like resignation, redundancy, dismissal, loss of license due to medical reasons. And then in the case of extended parental leave, so that's the segment where they are on a level of pay where they can no longer afford the sacrifice. And then the same in the world of long-term sickness, we will actually allow the employee to keep that car free of charge for a period of time, or they can also return the car with no termination under those parameters. That's kind of our standard scheme for everyone. With some of our corporates, we've got some other tiers that essentially enhance that risk. It is passed through as a cost into the employee, but honestly, that 10% or 10 car cap is more than enough for most people, which essentially just reduces that risk off the employer, and we absorb that risk as Octopus EV.
Thank you so much. Hopefully that's supported quite a few people on here. Let's have a quick, just having another quick skim because there's just so many coming through here. Let's have a look. Oh, Charlotte, you said someone submitted a question for Jane, but it's come through to you and not me, or have I misread that? Sorry.
No, I don't think.
That's all right.
Through.
Okay, great. So I think I'm conscious there's a lot in here that we're still not going to get covered in the next 4 minutes. Is there anything that anyone would like to say as a kind of closing remark or closing statement on behalf of their kind of part of the panel today? If not, I'll wrap it up for everyone. But thought I'd offer it out if anyone had anything impactful they wanted to share.
Well, I was actually interested in just, Jane, sort of really high level, what your experience with EVs have been at the airport so far. I know you guys don't work with Octopus, but as kind of an employer working in the space, have you had anything to share, Jane? It's okay if not, though.
Yeah. So the airport launched a lease scheme last year for employees. It hasn't had significant take up yet. I don't know the terms of the lease scheme for electric vehicles, but we have installed on the site 7 electric charging points, which are used by passengers and staff. So I think that there will be a review, because being where we're situated in London, we want to get cars off the road, but there are certain members of staff that is shown by your scoping where sustainable transport isn't an option. So we would try and encourage people to use electric cars for those journeys. So that's where we'd like to move to. And for the people that live closer to the airport, if they currently drive, to look at perhaps using, active travel or public transport.
Thanks, Jane. That's it, isn't it?
Thank you so much.
Some people won't have a sustainable option, so let's get them to use EVs, and that's where this kind of scheme comes in.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, lots of people saying thank you in the chat, and thank you so much for joining. And John, who's been banging the drum at work, hopefully we've inspired another 200 more people to be banging that drum in their workplaces for our schemes and these kind of carbon solutions more generally. So thank you so much. As we've said, we will be sharing the recording. I'm so sorry if we couldn't get to your questions. I've put the email addresses for our businesses in the chat panel, but please do reach out to us if you have any questions that are burning questions. If not, you can reply to the email we share later in the week. it was a really inspiring session for me. It definitely has got my kind of, creative juices flowing this morning of thinking about lots of things to be discussing. And it was fantastic to welcome all of our panelists as well. So thank you so much, panelists, for joining us today. I know it's high pressure to be ready to answer all these questions. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining today. And we will close off the session there. Thank you so much, everybody.